Hello and welcome to another video review from AV Forums. I'm Phil Hinton and I've been the editor since 2003. I'm also a fully trained and qualified THX and ISF calibrator with 17 years of experience. In today's video we're looking at the JVC DLA-N5 native 4K projector. If you like our reviews and want to see more of them while supporting our channel, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell to be informed every time we upload new video content. Also, don't forget to check out the Projector forums at Europe's largest AV community on AV Forums to see what owners of this projector think about it after normal use in their homes. And while you're there, feel free to read the full in-depth review, which features more detail than this video review. The JVC N5 is the entry-level native 4K projector in the lineup, sitting below the N7 and flagship NX9 models. It uses the same native 0.69-inch 4K native D-ILA devices as the higher two models and a resolution of 4096 by 2160. The N5 has a 17-element, 15-group all-glass lens with a 65mm diameter to project fully focused 4K native resolution to all corners of the screen. JVC also claims a brightness of 1700 lumens and a high native contrast of 40,000 to 1 with a dynamic contrast of 400,000 to 1. The lens shift is fully motorised with control over zoom, focus and shift, and this works with the new installation modes that allow you to have a preset control over the aspect ratio, masking and other settings. This allows you to have modes for various different viewing experiences and content. The DLA-N5 also supports HDR10 and hybrid log gamma HLG images with dynamic tone mapping thanks to a new frame adapt system when the projector has been updated to 3.10 firmware. This dynamic mapping significantly improves the HDR playback of the projector to balance out the image and retain details in the specular highlights as well as the shadows. Unlike the N7 and NX9, the N5 does not feature the wide colour gamut filter. The N5 uses the same chassis as the N7, which is larger and taller than the outgoing X series models. The NX9 is slightly bigger again. It follows the traditional home cinema design of a centralised lens with exhaust and air vents to each side of the front plate, which has a smooth finish. The lens opening is 7 inches wide with a 65mm diameter lens, which is sealed in the centre. There are 3 indicator lights to the top right when viewing from the front of the unit, and to the top is a stripe which runs the length of the body, and it has the JVC, HDR and ISF C3 logos at the lens end and 4K D-ILA logos at the rear. The projector is available in a black and white finish. Around the back we have the connections and control ports with the power socket to the bottom of the back plate. From the top left we have the 3D sync input for the emitter, and to the right of this are the 2 HDMI 2.0B inputs with HDCP 2.2 compliance. The HDMI will accept full 18 gigabits per second bandwidth 60p 4K 444 signals with HDR10 and HLG compatibility. Continuing to the right we also have an RS232 control port, a USB service port, LAN Ethernet and a 12 volt trigger. Rounding off the backplate are manual menu and access control buttons for use if you misplace the remote control. The remote control supplied with the N5 is the new N series model, which is a small plastic affair with a backlight and direct access keys placed on top of the unit. These are logically laid out and intuitive to use, and the unit fits neatly in the hand and is easy to use. There are a number of SDR picture presets but no THX settings, as the N5 and N7 are not THX certified. We found that Cinema was the most accurate picture preset to the industry standards, and we set the colour gamut to Rec 709, colour temperature to 6500 Kelvin and gamma at 2.4 for our viewing room, which is a light controlled Batcave. We actually found that to reach 2.4 we had to select the 2.6 setting in the projector. Looking at the grayscale, we can see that there are large errors in the brightest section of the track from 60% stimulus and up. There is a mix of too much red, green and blue at various points. Our delta E errors are also above the visible threshold of 3 from 60% upwards. Gamma is also tracking around the 2.4 mark, but with darkening at 10%, which translates on screen as some mild black crush. Our Rec 709 HD colour gamut results are also good, but impacted by the wayward grayscale tracking. Green is the major error here, with a hue pitch towards cyan, but everything else is there or thereabouts, giving the white point error. We certainly did not see any obvious issues when we were watching film or TV content with colours or skin tones. This review sample had a good number of hours on the bulb when it arrived, and it was 110 hours when we calibrated it. The grayscale tracking on the graph doesn't look very nice on first look. This is because we were forced to manage the inputs we corrected at 80 and 30% stimulus using the 2-point controls. Because of the way this projector was behaving, correcting the blue at 30% stim any more than shown would push red up at 10% stim, which then turned blacks red. There was nothing that we could do to flatten the blue rise in the mid-tone areas of the grayscale, but as blue is harder for the eye to pick up, this doesn't cause any visible issues with actual film and TV content. The higher end of the tracking is more accurate, but with delta E errors all under the visible threshold of 3, there are no visible issues within actual viewing material. Gamma is also better tracked, and the light black crush has been removed. The Rec 709 colour gamut results are also improved against the out-of-the-box results, now that we are able to get some improvement in the grayscale white point. There are still a few points that are slightly off on the graph, like 100% green, cyan and red, but with delta E errors all under the visible threshold of 3, these do not present any visible errors with actual film and TV content. Accuracy is very good. We measured 460 nits in the best D65 capable HDR mode with frame adapt, and contrast measured in at 47,734:1 with no zoom and 47,874:1 at full zoom with the Mono Iris open wide. Results like these will vary from projector to projector as they are bulb based and each age differently, but the contrast results are very close to those advertised by JVC. The PQ EOTF follows the ST2084 curve as much as it can up to 100 nits, and then it rolls off to a peak brightness available, but with frame adapt the tone mapping is dynamic with content and as such is not measurable. The P3 saturation sweeps within Rec 2020 are also very good, with a decent attempt to reach the wide colour gamut without the use of a filter in the light path. The downside is the colour volume isn't as rich as the NX9 or N7 using the filter, so colours are a little less punchy. But with actual HDR content, we were very happy with the colour performance on offer from the N5. BT 2020 coverage is 72% XY and 78% UV, with P3 measuring in at 95% XY and 98% UV. Like all higher end projectors, the JVC N5 benefits when being used in a Batcave environment like our testing room. This allows the projector to perform at its very best with excellent black levels and image detail. As mentioned in our NX9 review, the black floor is fractionally raised against the X series in comparison, like our reference X7900, but this will only be really noticeable to owners coming from an X model, and it's not a deal breaker at all. The native resolution of the N5 is 4096 by 2160, and displaying normal UHD 3840 by 2160 is easily managed without the need to zoom. Image sharpness is excellent and is uniform across the screen thanks to the excellent lens being used in the N5. Upscaling and video processing is very good on the N5 with nice sharp edges without any unwanted ringing or artifacts. Motion is also very good, with the JVC able to display 400 lines on a moving pattern with no interpolation. Adding clear motion drive on maximum up this to 650 lines, but with some obvious artifact being introduced. The N5 also benefits from having motion enhance set to low, which removes unwanted image blur not present in the content without adding any interpolation. It's subtle but beneficial in most cases. Motion with 24 frames per second content is also very good, with no induced judder added that's not already present in the content. SDR in low lamp mode is a real strong point of all JVC DLA projectors, and the N5 is no exception, with stunning dynamics, solid blacks and very good shadow details adding depth to the image. Colours are also superb, with incredibly believable skin tones and a cinematic edge that other projectors just can't match. Blacks continue to be the JVC strong point, with an inky deep sheen that doesn't crush detail. In fact, the 4K models have a very good just above black performance once they're calibrated that really adds to the image dynamics. I once again used a test scene from the Blu-ray of Jaws and ended up watching the rest of the film because it looked so good. Moving to HDR, and once again the disclaimer is that HDR on a projector is not like a TV and will never be able to achieve the level of dynamic range and specular highlights. However, with the new version 3.10 firmware added that adds the frame adapt to all native 4K JVC models, JVC now has one of the most convincing HDR images on a projector thanks to the dynamic tone mapping used. Blacks remain deep and shadows to midtones are excellent, which really adds depth and texture to HDR images, with details still visible in most of the highlights without dulling the image down. Content mastered at 1000 and 4000 nits are handled as you would expect, with highlights looking bright but with detail retained where possible. The sun in pan, for example, looks as it should, with no hard clipping, and details remain visible in the clouds without whites looking blown out. Skin tones look superb and lifelike, with excellent texture to faces and pores being visible. Colours are also natural looking and balanced, with no signs of bloom or oversaturation. However, being critical, they are also not quite as saturated as they should be for wide colour gamut, as the N5 doesn't use a P3 filter. The trade-off though is a much brighter image, as there's nothing in the light path to knock lumens. HDR looks great on the N5, and JVC has really nailed the frame adapt dynamic tone mapping to make their 4K models the best currently tested projectors with the format. As with SDR content, the strong point with HDR on the N5 is the superb cinematic looking images that transport you to wherever the movie is taking you. Images are sharp, detailed and colourful, with a natural and cinematic flair that's really hard to describe. While the N5 may well be the entry level when it comes to native 4K, the performance on offer is excellent. It might not have the wide colour gamut filter of the N7 and NX9, but it still manages to produce some of the best HDR10 images we've seen from a projector at this price point. The only small negative being an overall lack of absolute colour saturation, but it's not something that you would notice in isolation, and as such, it's probably not going to be an issue for the vast majority of users. The frame adapt dynamic tone mapping is a game changer for JVC and elevates their machines above the competition for balanced, nuanced and effective HDR image quality. That alone is worth the cost of entry. Overall, the N5 is an excellent entry point to native 4K projection from JVC, and it offers superb SDR and very good HDR picture quality. The lack of a wide colour gamut filter is not a major factor, as the picture quality with HDR is still some of the best we've yet seen from a projector at the price point. We really are struggling to find any real negatives with the N5, and as such, it comes highly recommended.